After a series of dirty bombs occurred on Earth, the environment became extremely hostile. The air was filled with deadly toxins, leaving people unable to go outside, and as a result, many went to meet St. Peter. So if you like these kinds of movies, don't forget to share this with your friends. And now, get comfortable and join me for this summary. It all begins on a normal day. A man takes out the trash, makes a cup of coffee, and brings it to his wife in bed. In the background, a news anchor delivers the morning headlines. While he wakes her up and suggests reviving a passionate night, she refuses and quickly gets ready for work. After saying goodbye, she gets in her car and leaves. Alone at home, the man gets ready and suddenly hears alarming news on the radio. The announcer reports massive explosions in downtown Los Angeles and Beverly Hills. Fearing for his wife, he tries to call Lexi, but the line is busy. He hears there are many victims in the streets and that the attacks are continuing across the city. He keeps dialing Lexi over and over, quite desperate. The line remains busy and not a single call goes through, so he decides to turn on the TV to see more. But there was no signal, and upon running outside, he is horrified to see a column of smoke rising over the houses, while the announcer, with a cracking voice, declares a state of emergency. Unable to contact his wife, he leaves her a voicemail and heads downtown to try to find her. Driving through the streets, he witnesses widespread panic as more alarming news continues on the radio. On one particular street, he encounters a policeman blocking the road. Realizing he cannot proceed, he tries to turn around and find another route. The announcer continues reporting on the victims and devastation in downtown LA. Since the police won't let anyone in or out, he looks for another way to reach his wife. The man stops at a nearby store, but the clerk tells him they are already closed. At that moment, his phone rings, but the call cuts off immediately. Back in his car, he hears news that it wasn't just explosions. It is highly likely that toxic chemicals were released. These deadly toxins were spreading throughout the city along with the smoke from the fires. Authorities advise everyone to return home and completely seal every opening to the outside world. Without hesitation, the man returns to the store to get duct tape and plastic. Driving back, the man listens to the radio again. This time, the announcer reports that all major highways are closed to civilians, and police urge people to stay home and not obstruct emergency vehicles. On that same street, more police cars are seen blocking the way. This time, the officers are wearing gas masks. The explosions may have been caused by chemical bombs or deadly toxins. The perpetrators are unknown, and the explosions are still occurring. For now, the primary priority for rescuers is to stop the fires that are sending clouds of poisonous smoke into the air, which could kill everyone around. Upon hearing this, the man notices a car speeding toward him, completely covered in ash. Seconds later, the police stop it and order the driver to stay inside. He is as nosy as your neighbor, so he stops to watch, but an officer tells him to go home immediately if he hasn't had contact with the contaminated. He tries to explain that he must get downtown to find his wife, but the officer won't listen. Suddenly, someone is seen getting out of the contaminated car and trying to run, only to be shot by the police. At this point, it's quite disturbing. Noticing this, he has no choice but to say, "Well, I guess I have to go home." But he still tries to call his wife repeatedly on the way. Near his house, he sees a young boy, and after finding out where he comes from, accompanies him home safely, knowing the streets are already in chaos. Back home, the man hopes his wife has returned, but to his disappointment, she isn't there. In his car, he hears reports describing the chaos as people unsuccessfully try to break through police barricades. They confirm the ash is poisonous, and the smoke in affected areas is thickening, and the stench is unbearable. In a panic, the man tries to contact his wife again without success, when suddenly he hears a door opening. Turning around, he sees an old man, the neighbor from next door, asking for shelter and pushing him away. The man continues trying to reach his wife, while the neighbor tunes the radio to a Spanish station, and what he hears leaves him in shock. He immediately begins sealing all the cracks in the house. Confused, the man asks him to translate the news and finally discovers that the entire house must be sealed. At this point, he cries for his wife and refuses to do it until she returns. But the radio continues reporting terrifying news. Chemical bombs were detonated across the city. Many areas are contaminated, and Los Angeles is under quarantine. Finally, with tears in his eyes, the man reluctantly seals all the doors and windows with the tape and plastic he bought. Once done, he briefly goes out to leave boxes of supplies and essentials for his wife on the porch. Looking back, he sees ash falling from the sky. He tries calling his wife again, still with no success. Meanwhile, the radio reports that scientists have arrived in contaminated zones with mobile labs and that victims will receive antibiotics later. Worried, the man listens to the reporter at the epicenter of the disaster, and suddenly his phone rings. Hopeful, he answers. But it's Lexi's mother. She is frantic, saying that anyone caught in the explosion zone is likely already dead or won't survive. She asks Brad to give the phone to Lexi, but he hangs up, devastated, sitting on the floor hugging himself and crying bitterly over what has happened to his wife. After calming down a bit, he sits thinking of her, and then hears a scream outside. His wife had returned. The bomb exploded half a block from her car, but she miraculously survived and made it home. Though her condition was grave, she was struggling to breathe and coughing violently. She begs to be let in. But Brad refuses. He explains that the bombs were toxic. The entire area is contaminated, and it's dangerous. He asks her to go to the back door, trying to calm her and explain the situation, but she refuses to listen. Later, once Lexi has calmed down, Brad takes the radio to the door so she can hear the news. The announcer reports on an unknown toxin, likely a hybrid of multiple chemical agents and a virus of unknown origin with lethal effects. During the night, Brad, with a breaking voice, tells his wife he waited until the last possible moment and didn't seal the doors while there was still a chance. Unfortunately, authorities aren't providing information, likely because they don't know what's happening or how long it will last. Sitting on opposite sides of the door, Lexi talks to her husband. She asks about their plans for the day, plans that were never meant to happen. Then she checks if the landline works and asks Brad not to listen to her voicemails when he checks the machine. At that moment, the news gives new information about the infected. Those who manage to escape the quarantine zone must remain in isolation for many more days, though exactly how many is unknown. The news sends Lexi into a fit of rage and desperation. She decides to break the glass of the door with her phone and screams to be let in. Brad immediately covers the hole with a pillow and tries to calm her, but she ignores him and demands to be admitted. She doesn't want to die alone. Just then, a worker, the neighbor's helper, comes to help Brad, telling him that medics will arrive in the morning to perform tests and then seal the hole. Once Lexi calms down, Brad tells her he loves her and offers to call for help. Stepping away, he tries to call 911, but the line is saturated. Meanwhile, the worker tries to contact his own wife, but to his dismay, she doesn't answer. After a while, Lexi's phone rings. Brad sees it's her mother, but she doesn't want to talk and leaves the phone on the ground. She decides to take maximum precautions against the unknown virus, going to the bathroom and pouring a whole bottle of bleach over herself. At that moment, the news reports that dangerous zones remain under indefinite quarantine. The next day, Lexi notices people in hazmat suits nearby and, looking closer, sees strangers taking someone from the street into a police car. Terrified, she tells her husband. He warns her to be careful and stay out of sight, mentioning he saw police shoot a man earlier. This terrifies her, as she had been waiting for doctors to evaluate her. Brad, sighing deeply, admits the worker lied. No one is coming. He lied just to calm them down. Cursing, Lexi demands her phone back. Later, Brad isolates one room of the house, so Lexi doesn't have to stay outside. And once inside, she devours food and drinks while Brad tells her he finally reached 911. But the news isn't encouraging. Hospitals are overwhelmed and antibiotics are being distributed by mail, so they have to wait. Hearing this, Lexi panics, realizing she will likely die. Brad tries to calm her, though he too has lost hope. A bit later, Lexi's mother calls again. This time, she decides to talk and tells her mother she was at the epicenter. Her mother becomes frantic, urging her to seek help, but Lexi refuses, having seen people being arrested firsthand. Lexi tells her mother not to pressure her. At that moment, a car alarm goes off outside. She notices a child in the vehicle. After saying goodbye to her mother, she calls the boy inside, sharing her food and water. He is scared and alone. His parents left for work that morning and haven't returned. Watching his wife from the window, Brad becomes very tense and takes his anger out on a neighbor. Once he calms down, Brad approaches Lexi. She introduces him to the boy, who tells them how scared he was by the bomb, describing how the ground exploded. After hearing the boy, Brad decides to let them into a specific area so Lexi and the boy can shower and wash off the contaminated dust. In the kitchen, the worker tells Brad he has decided to leave to find his wife. Brad advises him not to go, but the worker leaves anyway, asking Brad to look after Lexi. After he leaves, Brad isolates part of the house to give Lexi and the boy access to the shower. Lexi fears the water might be contaminated, but Brad assures her it's safe. That night, after the shower, Lexi sees a man at the back door. Terrified, she screams for Brad, but it turns out to be their neighbor, Rick. They have heard there is a hospital ship nearby with a safe shelter leaving from the port of San Pedro. The news lifts Lexi's spirits and, despite Brad's objections, she decides to leave with Rick and the boy, Timmy, convinced it's her only chance. Left alone, Brad obsessively listens to the news about scientists trying to learn about the virus. After a while, there is a knock at the door. He sees a man in a hazmat suit who introduces himself as Corporal Marshall from a special epidemiological unit. He asks Brad if he has had contact with infected people. Brad explains he was home the whole time and didn't let his wife in. There was an incident where she broke the window with her phone, but he immediately sealed the hole. The corporal orders Brad to stay inside and says they will collect samples of ash that might have entered. Brad agrees on the condition they don't enter his house. He follows instructions to put a sample in a bag and tape it to the glass. The sample is taken to the lab, and minutes later the team returns. Brad hears his house has been marked with a red tag. Confused, he demands an explanation, but the team ignores him. They enter the part of the house where Lexi had been and inspect it before leaving. The news continues to offer no hope. After a time, Lexi returns and tells Brad they couldn't get help. Rick and Timmy were taken by police, but she escaped. Brad is relieved she's back, but Lexi begins to cough violently. She notices the red mark on the wall and demands an explanation, but Brad knows nothing. Later, they hear a strange sound. Using a flashlight, she discovers a pile of dead birds. Desperate, Lexi listens to her voicemails from her husband and family. She calls her brother Jason for support, but breaks into another coughing fit and hangs up. By morning, Lexi's condition worsens. Sitting on opposite sides of the door, she and Brad discuss their relationship, their past fights, and the children they never had. They confess their love and promise everything will be okay. Suddenly, they are interrupted by people in hazmat suits who grab Lexi and drag her away. Brad is furious but helpless. Once Lexi is taken, a corporal approaches and tells Brad that the best thing he did was not let her in. However, when she broke the window with her phone, contaminated ash entered. Due to the heat and airtight conditions, the house became a perfect environment for the virus to spread. The air inside is now deadly, and Brad himself is a carrier. The doctors can't do anything. They seal the house with shields. In a panic, Brad tears at the insulation, begging to be let out, but they ignore him and release a gas into the house. Brad seeks an exit and manages to break onto the porch, but he hits the outer dome shield. The police secure the dome to ensure it's airtight. One officer loses patience and hits the plastic. Brad falls unable to get up and dies painfully within minutes from the suffocating gas. Lexi, watching from outside, falls into a hysterical fit. Once she realizes he is gone, she is paralyzed. Medics take her away and start an IV, saying there was no other choice. Inside the sealed house, the radio continues to play. The announcer reports that infected houses will be demolished and transported to a remote location for investigation.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.